Hey everyone, this is Emma. I want to talk to you about a trend that's been on Twitter for a week or so, hoping that people will film their local hospitals in an attempt to prove that, I don't know, there aren't people inside suffering from the effects of COVID 19. So let's just jump right in and take a look at some of what's been going on Twitter. Just went to two hospitals in LA to check out these, quote, war zones the mainstream media keeps telling us about. They are very quiet and empty. We are not being told the truth. Little video here of the outside of a hospital. And they go into the parking garage. Looks pretty empty. Okay. Next one. We've got a video of a parking lot. Doesn't look too busy. Blocked off parking. Let's see what this one is. San Jose, California. Looks like the entrance to an emergency department. And somebody's just standing there, filming in the parking lot. Cool. And over here, this is Mount Sinai of Queens. Just passed by and I barely saw tumbleweed. And according to the media, Queens, New York is the hot zone. Just a picture here. Person walking by the outside of Mount Sinai in Queens. And here, Fairview Hospital in Cleveland, Ohio. Not busy with that hashtag film your hospital. All right, first things first. These people that posted these things, these pictures and these short videos are not brave. They are not spies. They are not investigative journalists. If you look at the angle of most of these photos and the videos, especially that last one, let me show you that again. If you look at the angle of some of these, you can tell that they're holding their phones a little bit awkwardly, sideways, low down, something kind of weird, even if they're outside completely alone. So why might the outside of a hospital look so empty right now? Why might the outside of a hospital look so boring? Why might the outside of a hospital look so slow? You may have heard that nearly all elective medical procedures have been canceled. Here's an article from March 18th. As coronavirus gains momentum, Pence calls for cancellation of all elective medical and dental procedures. Trump administration asks providers to preserve medical supplies in the fight against COVID-19. The federal government is stepping up pressure on hospitals and other providers to cancel all elective medical and dental procedures. At a midday briefing today, Vice President Mike Pence said the action was needed to preserve medical supplies and resources for the fight against COVID-19. We are asking every American and our medical community leaders and hospitals to partner with us and delay elective procedures across the country and our healthcare system to ensure that medical supplies and medical capacity go where they're needed, said Pence, who leads the administration's coronavirus task force. So in addition to hospitals and medical professionals being requested to cancel elective procedures, many people who were scheduled to have elective procedures have also canceled or postponed them themselves. For example, my own mom is putting off having a pacemaker installed until it seems safer to do so. So obviously, parking lots are probably empty because nobody's going to the hospital right now unless they absolutely need to. I don't know, if you don't frequent hospitals, you might not know that hospitals are not only emergency rooms and intensive care units. They're bustling buildings full of diagnostic tools, outpatient services, various inpatient forms of care, and so much more. And a lot of that has completely halted. And for the things that haven't stopped, like emergencies, obviously, inpatient hospitalizations for whatever reason, births, cancer treatments, and more, Some of these services have been moved to different buildings and different places or different areas of hospitals, so you're not going to find those people at the hospitals that some of these people on Twitter probably went to. But also, many of these services that are still occurring at these empty-looking hospitals are not operating as usual. A lot of emergency room patients all across the country, even if their hospitals are not overflowing with COVID-19 patients, are not allowing patients to have a loved one come with them unless absolutely necessary. If it's a juvenile or something like that, obviously they can have a parent come with, but a lot of people are having to be dropped off at the emergency room and not have a family member or friend stay with them, which used to be normal. Women giving birth in some places also cannot have partners present. So that really reduces the amount of people that are in and around hospitals right now. Here's an article in the New York Times. Some pregnant women in New York City will have to deliver babies alone. I have not stopped crying, said an expectant mother who learned that her husband could not be with her when she gives birth. Now, that is something that's not the norm across the entire country, but it's happening in New York City and it's happening in a few other places, and it's probably something that's going to increase and happen in other places. But it's also, just because people can have their partner with them in some places doesn't mean that they're allowed to have a bunch of family and friends come visit as soon as a baby is born. There's all kinds of things happening at the hospitals right now that are different than normal. So all of these people that are going into the hospital because they have COVID-19, they are also alone. And this is the one that makes the most sense. We know that the coronavirus is highly contagious. We know that there's limited space. We know that there's limited supplies. So these people who are in the ICU or whatever because they have the coronavirus disease are there alone. And call me crazy, but I really don't think that we should expect to see their family members camped out in the parking garages and the parking lots all day and all night waiting for word about their family members. And I don't know about you. It might be because I'm a parent, so I'm connected to a lot of other parents online and social media circles, and I'm a member of various groups of parents that are centered around certain topics and common themes. But a common theme that is repeating itself almost daily is, my child was injured, what do I do? Does this cut require a trip to the ER, or can we handle this ourselves? Usually followed by an image of the injury that was mentioned in the post, somewhere in the comments, and then a discussion happens on whether or not the bump was hard enough, the cut is deep enough, the fever is high enough, etc., to warrant a trip to the doctor. Because people are hoping that other people will say, no, you're okay, it's okay to stay home. Nobody wants to go to the emergency room right now. Nobody even wants to go to a regular doctor right now. So there are just heaps of reasons that we're going to see a lot less people around hospitals right now. So do the hospitals look slow? Heck yes, the hospitals look slow. Is looking at the outside of a building an acceptable gauge of what is happening in the inside of the building? I don't think so. If you drive past an elementary school and you see how it looks and it feels outside and you see how it sounds outside, generally it's empty. It's pretty silent. There aren't a ton of cars around. Maybe an hour earlier, there were parents dropping kids off. There were people on bikes. There were buses lining the streets. But right now, there's nothing. Walk in the front door. What do you hear? You still might hear nothing. Maybe there's some faint sounds from far away. Walk into a classroom or the lunchroom or the gym, and then bam, all of that sound and all of that activity hits you. That's where the activity is. But first, you need to check in at the front office. You need to get a sticker to wear that has your name on it and says that you're a visitor, and you need to sign in because of safety. So I think we can expect things to be a little bit similar at hospitals. Maybe some of these people that think something crazy is going on because the hospitals are too slow have not been to a hospital recently or ever, so they don't understand how they work. There's some people that are also wondering why we are not seeing video and images of what's going on inside of these hospitals, because it's so crazy. So if it was so crazy, we'd have to see what was going on, right? Well, in the United States, we've got this little big thing that's called HIPAA. And again, if you've ever been to a hospital or been to a doctor's appointment, you should probably kind of know what HIPAA is, because you have to sign a little thing every time saying that you've been informed about what HIPAA is. But I know a lot of people sign things and look at things and check boxes without actually reading what the thing says. So maybe this is something that people should brush up on. HIPAA is not something that is in other countries. HIPAA is unique to the United States. Other countries might have their own version of HIPAA, but there are obviously not things like that, most likely in some of the countries that we are seeing this footage coming from. And here's a great tweet that highlights that. With the hashtag #FilmYourHospital, USA has HIPAA, but my turkey does not. I can share. However, as medical, we do risk getting arrested for sharing the truth. This is what you do not want to see, USA. Crowded waiting rooms, packed ERs. A little video here with a packed waiting room. Lots of people in masks, lots of people with their heads down, laying on desks, on their arms, what have you. This is not what we're seeing coming out of the United States because of that thing called HIPAA. HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It was signed by Bill Clinton in 1996. The HIPAA privacy rule regulates the use and disclosure of protected health information. Now, I don't think social media is part of facilitating treatment, payment, or healthcare operations. Any other disclosures of public health information, which would include images and videos, require written authorization from the individual, from the patient, for the disclosure. If I were an employee at a hospital and I wanted to take a video or some pictures and I wanted to release that, and I wanted to do it legally because I didn't want to get fired and I didn't want to get into trouble, I would have to go up to everybody in my video and my picture and get their express written authorization to do that. And I don't think that's going to happen. That's not something that we should expect to see. It also means that I can't just walk into a hospital, walk through security, walk through the locked doors into areas like an ER and an ICU without permission or credentials and then take pictures and videos. And thankfully, floating around in that #FilmYourHospital hashtag has been some people that have been speaking truth and highlighting what HIPAA is, or different reasons that hospitals might not be looking packed. So Sarah says, apparently no one in the #FilmYourHospital hashtag knows what HIPAA is. You're not seeing a flood of photos and video from inside hospitals because that's how people who work there get fired and or sued, you complete melons. I also want to point out that people who have leaked images and video from hospitals and morgues in China were arrested, like Fang Bin. You might remember the story about this guy. Here's an article in the Los Angeles Times. He filmed corpses of coronavirus victims in China, then the police broke into his home. Masked men in hazmat suits came in the night and knocked on Fang Bin's door in Wuhan, China, demanding to put him in quarantine. You went to such a dangerous place. Couldn't you have been infected? One of them asked. What if your sickness spreads to others? Fang grew suspicious. He wasn't sick, and none of them was a doctor. My temperature is normal, argued Fang, who recorded the encounter. Come back with an inspection warrant. They then barged into his home, confiscated his electronic devices, and took him away, not to a hospital, but to a police station. And you might remember Ming Lin, who worked at a hospital in Bellingham, Washington. Here's an article about him in the Seattle Times. Doctors firing in coronavirus crisis shows a failure of corporate medicine. This doctor blew the whistle on the conditions in his hospital and how they were ill-prepared for what was happening and what was going to continue to happen. The article says, the strain of the coronavirus pandemic should have the entire healthcare system focused intently on quality and safety, yet the dismissal of Bellingham Dr. Ming Lin shows how misguided business practices can hold back medical providers in a time of crisis. Lin practiced at Peace Health St. Joseph Medical Center, where he was an emergency room doctor for 17 years. As the coronavirus crisis mounted, he took to social media to publicize conditions at the hospital he found appalling: a lack of separation of suspected COVID-19 cases from other patients and a dearth of testing for the virus. Lin's employer removed him in response. So Ming didn't even record a video or take photos, do something that he wasn't supposed to do. He simply tried to blow the whistle on the hospital being not prepared. Each and every story like this, especially when it doesn't involve something as big as leaking footage and images from inside of a hospital, is going to discourage any nurses and doctors from doing things like that. So many are even discouraged from complaining about their lack of masks right now because they're worried about the ramifications and how they might be punished for doing so. So if we can't film inside of hospitals ourselves, and we can't expect doctors or nurses to leak the footage, what can we do? Well, I've got an idea. We can talk to medical professionals. I'm sure that most people have got to know at least one, and if you don't, you can probably find one. But if that's completely impossible for you, what you can do is take a slanted, completely very far away photo of a nurse instead of walking up to them and asking some questions. Check out this tweet. Southwest General Hospital in Ohio. The nurse standing outside looked bored. Here's some of those slanted, awkward photos that I mentioned earlier. And oh, there's a nurse. Look at that. I think this person was driving by and holding up their phone, trying not to be seen. And like, look, it looks like a bored nurse. I don't know how you can judge if this nurse looks bored or not by this photo. But you know what you could do if you really wanted to find out what was going on inside of this hospital or inside of another hospital? You can find a nurse like that standing outside of the hospital and try to ask them some questions. They might not want to talk to you, which is fine. They might not have anything interesting to tell you, which is fine. But it's a lot more interesting and will probably give you a lot more information than just taking a faraway slanted photo out of your car as you drive past them and then think that you did something wonderful to the cause of proving that hospitals are empty and all of the nurses are bored. So yes, you can actually ask people that are on the ground seeing the things, questions about the things that you want to know about. This is exactly how we learn the truth about all kinds of things, like what was happening in Syria. This is exactly how we learned the truth about what was happening in Venezuela. This is exactly how we learn the truth about most things. So I highly, highly encourage you not to just trust the mainstream narrative straight out of the gate, but I also highly encourage you to not call what the mainstream media is saying, not just call it a lie without doing any work at all to figure it out for yourself. So speaking of the mainstream, I wanted to talk about one thing that I saw come up in a lot of these threads multiple times. And I will show that to you. And I know a lot of people won't have the perspective on this that I do, so I wanted to make sure that I address that. Here are pictures of what very much appear to be the exact same room. One is listed as being in New York. One is listed as being in Italy, an Italian hospital. Obviously, these are not in two different countries. These are images or stills from a video of the exact same room. So, how can something like that happen? Does that mean that there's a grand conspiracy going on? No, not necessarily. The same image from one place, yes, was attached to two wildly different places. That's wrong, obviously, but that doesn't mean that it was done on purpose or that it was to trick you, because are we really that dumb that that we should be able to be tricked by the same picture? That would just kind of be a joke. But the powers that be aren't so hard up for images of hospitals that they have to use the same one twice like this. It was most likely just a mistake. Yes, mistakes like this can happen. I happen to work in independent media, and I can say with confidence that sourcing images of things can sometimes be hard. It's even harder for us, independent outlets that don't have a big budget and a big team, than it is for the mainstream media monoliths that have bottomless pits of funding, but still, they can screw up in this way. Sometimes you search for an image, and it was tagged incorrectly, and it's just not your fault. This is literally proof of nothing more than a mistake. So if you've seen this and you've been confused by it, just pass over it. It's really not a big deal. So I'm going to say something that might not feel very great if you're one of the uncomfortably large handful of folks that are not believing that the hospitals are full right now, or you're just dead set on not believing anything that the mainstream media or the government is reporting, you're literally just as bad as the people that blindly trust the mainstream narrative. I'm sorry, but that's true. It's just as dangerous and damaging and irresponsible. But let me put it a little bit more simply. You're just as bad as the people that you claim to hate. The people that you complain about, the people that you share memes about, you're just as bad. If you know me, you know that I don't like the mainstream media. You know that I don't typically trust the mainstream media. You know that I don't really like or trust the US government. But honestly, I can't say that there is a government that I do trust. So it's not just this one. But that does not mean that I look at every single thing that either of them say and I instantly say that it's false. It's not even a little bit that way. So if you, for example, cast an extremely wide net and you scoop up everything that the mainstream media says during like a week, in that net, you will find a ton of truth. You can't deny that. If you don't think that there's a ton of truth in a net like that, then like this conversation is not for you. So a lot of what we find in that net might be like really stupid topics. A lot of it might be because they just want clicks and they want good ratings and they want revenue and they want to make money. They want to better their brand or whatever. But that doesn't make that stuff untrue. It just makes it like maybe less important. There's an ulterior motive to it. Some other amount of what you would find that in that net is probably mostly true, but sometimes there are things that are purposely left out, or they're said in a certain way, or something like that. It's kind of subtle. Perhaps there are also a few other things that are just completely, absolutely, totally wrong. And then there are probably some things that are put there for a reason, but also that doesn't mean that they're not real. There's literally no reason to be so stubborn that you outright think the opposite of anything that the mainstream media says. So please don't be that person. Likewise, please don't be the person that reads only independent media and trusts every single thing that your favorite outlet or your favorite journalist or your favorite YouTuber says. Because really, that's just as bad. So who should you be? Please look at things from all of the angles. Whether it's Syria, it's Venezuela, it's Iran, it's a pandemic, just use your brain. Decide for yourself. Let your preferences guide you and who you trust, and trust those people that have repeatedly shown themselves to be trustworthy. That's kind of how trust should work. But remember that no one person, no one outlet or whatever is perfect and going to be right all the time. They will sometimes be wrong at some point. That's inevitable. Sometimes that might be on purpose, whether they're independent or mainstream, but usually probably not. Speaking of trustworthiness, trust of mainstream media has been dropping for a while, which is great, and they deserve it. Like I just mentioned, a lot of what the mainstream media reports is true and accurate, but we know who owns them and we know who can pull the strings when they want to. It doesn't mean they're doing it all the time, but we know they're there, we know who they are, and we know what they can do. It's really a conspiracy to think that that doesn't happen, because we have heaps and heaps of proof that that's a thing. So because when it comes to important issues like geopolitics, US politics, health, the police state, etc., the mainstream media has a tendency to promote the US government-ish narrative on those things. That has made an uncomfortably large number of people think that the media is in on what's happening right now and that everything they are reporting is false. And while those people frustrate me right now to no end, you remember the story from when you were younger of the boy who cried wolf? Mainstream media has cried wolf so many times. They got themselves into this place. They've lied to us. They've hid bits of the truth. They've covered for pedophiles, so on and so forth. So many times. So now that we're faced with a global pandemic and we need to be paying attention to it, there's a lot of people who are not going to pay attention to it. The virus is real from all that I can see and everything that I've paid attention to and every person that I've talked to. It's very clear that the virus is real. But the media has played its games for so long that people's brains are like literally broken at this point. So I'm not making excuses for those people that are not believing anything right now, but the mainstream media really, really screwed things up. So I'm absolutely not telling you to trust everything and anything that the mainstream media, various governments, our own government, public health departments and officials are saying. But I'm also not telling you to not trust what they're saying. You need to take in all of the information from various sources and varied sources, search for things yourself, talk to people as you're reading this and you're learning these things so that you start connecting the dots in your brain. Think about it as you're repeating it to people, and you can get some feedback from the people that you're talking to too. Talk through what you're learning. And then reach out to people, especially that have firsthand experience, like any good investigator would do. And then you can come to your own conclusions. Don't come to the conclusion that mainstream media is telling you to come to, but also don't come to the conclusion that independent media or personalities are telling you. Come to your own conclusion, because you are absolutely capable of doing that. And right now, so many people are out of work or stuck at home and can't go anywhere. So we've got spare time to do the research and to learn things, not just to share and copy and paste and repeat things that other people are telling us. We all have the time and the ability, because we have a brain for a reason, to figure these things out for ourselves. So back to a bunch of those little things that I showed you on Twitter, little clips and images where people drove to the outside of their local hospitals and felt like they were doing something. They did do something. They left their house, but they didn't do much. They just took a picture or took a video that fit the narrative that they kind of already had, or that went along with the tweet that they were responding to. They were just adding to that. They weren't digging further. They weren't investigating anything. They weren't investing themselves in answering a question. It would have been so easy for some of these people to reach out and to find somebody to talk to. Maybe that bored-looking nurse outside of the hospital wouldn't have wanted to talk or couldn't have talked, but at least you could have tried, instead of just snapping a little sneaky spy photo of them and then thinking that you did something cool. Anytime that you see something like this that's taking off, especially when it's trying to kind of debunk this whole thing, just dig into it and use your brain and compare sources. Look for varied information and try to just figure something out for yourself. Like always, I will put some of the sources and links to things in the description on YouTube. And I don't usually promote this, but anybody that wants to, I do have a fundraiser that is always linked in the comments that you're welcome to toss a few dollars my way if you want to. But I know everybody is kind of hurting right now, but I just like to include this in the comments. Absolutely no pressure there, but I feel like I should mention it. Thank you for watching this video. Please share it. Comment, and I'll hopefully respond. Let me know if there's anything that you'd like me to do a video about. Thanks for watching. Please share and look for the next video. Thanks.